Succession is a drama which centers on the wealthy and dysfunctional Roy family who own a global media corporation called Waystar Royco. The plot revolves around family power struggles as the aging patriarch Logan Roy, played by Brian Cox, faces the issue of succession, specifically who will take over control of the company as he begins to show signs of weakening health. Logan's three children, Kendall, Roman and Shiv, each attempt to win Logan's favour and desperately attempt to position themselves as next in line. I say three children because of course Conor, the eldest, is often forgotten about. Born from a different mother from the rest of the children, Conor's backstory isn't fully detailed, but we do know that his parents divorced, Logan had his mother institutionalized, and he was interested in politics from a very young age. Conor has a milder, more pleasant personality in comparison to his half-siblings. He is not involved in careerism and ladder climbing at Waystar, avoiding company drama and living away from the toxicity out in New Mexico with his partner. Conor is not in the show as much as the other children, usually in the background, popping up here and there during events and weddings and such, which is a perfect reflection of his place in the Roy family. The general perception of Conor is that he's a bit of a comic relief. Overall, he's relatively pleasant, but typically for a man born into wealth, deeply out of touch. But I wanted to talk a bit about him today to show that there's more to him. In fact, I'm looking to make two almost polar opposite arguments. In this video, I want to take a look at Conor actually being a deeply sad character who is brushed aside in life. Sure, he is a character who has no foot in the real world and no grasp of morality, but there is a genial, warm nature to him, and there are many moments, such as his superhero speech, that speak to a man who is deeply troubled inside. I also have another video that I'm looking to make where I want to talk about the fact that I think Logan is actually an extremely dangerous character, especially with him wanting to become president, and how someone like that, with the insecurities he has, can be an unhinged disaster. Let me know if you'd like to see this video down in the comments section below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. To be fair, Conor is a fantastic character, very layered. You could make 3 videos on this guy and still have more to say. I actually really like him and want to start off by talking about some of his good points before we dive into unseemly aspects about him in the next video. Conor is not really appreciated by characters and fans alike, and it's time he got his dues. And once we're done praising him in this video, I'm going to flip the argument on its head for the next video. It's especially cathartic to see him calmly waltz into the frame amid the chaos and infighting between the siblings, without a care in the world, just enjoying life on a different page to everyone else. Alan Ruck, who plays him, has talked about building the idea of this guy who is marching to the beat of a drum that nobody else can hear. Which is very true, as Conor is perhaps the most hilariously self-involved character, but ironically the least self-aware character. He's simple, likeable and dorky, but behind his laissez-faire outlook on life there is a deep sadness buried inside Conor Roy. There's elements of the Roy children that speak to us all, whether it be abuse, neglect, sibling rivalry, privilege or lack thereof, and Conor sticks out. I think he's low-key one of the saddest characters in the show. Of course, Conor comes off as extremely immature in the sense that he is needy and has a pitiful sheltered aura around him, but he shows the least capacity among the family for malice and betrayal, and that neediness definitely, at least partially, stems from an absence of a father figure in his life. We learn that he shit his bag during a camping trip he took his siblings on, which is very funny on the surface, at his expense. But it's deeply troubling when you consider that Conor basically took it upon himself to act as a surrogate father to his siblings because their dad wasn't available. It's not his job to take his siblings on a camping trip, and clearly it's a significant memory for the likes of Roman, who mentions it on another occasion. In fact, there's a few things that Roman does that suggest there's a lot of love there for Conor, like not wanting to be late for his wedding rehearsal, unlike the other two who don't care, and insisting they all stay with him when he gets ditched at the rehearsal. Conor went to Kendall's birthday party without any ulterior motive, unlike the other two, and when he's offended by Kendall's poster, Ken takes it down. The point being, In spite of the toxicity, there is love there between the siblings. It's just buried under years of repression, and a lot of it is related to Conor. It's a real shame how the other siblings tend to dismiss Conor or see him as an afterthought or a joke. It seems he's only ever been good to his siblings, and yet they're so terrible to him. I imagine they see his open and cozy attitude towards them as weakness, as they've grown up to think that the abrasive attitudes from their father are something to emulate. Conor is mild, Conor is not competitive, therefore Conor is weak. They openly ignore his presence, like when Kendall says to his siblings, "I'm the eldest son," leading to Conor's outburst exclaiming that he is the eldest son, clearly an outburst manifested from simmering tension over the course of perhaps decades. Kendall saying that openly in front of the siblings is frankly disgusting, and as Conor eloquently puts it, "You're hurt? I didn't see Pop for 3 years, but your spoon wasn't shiny enough, huh?" When Logan is dying, the Roy brothers call Shiv over to try and have a final goodbye, but they don't even consider calling over Conor before it's too late, and there's numerous other examples. The other kids associate love with abuse, so they continue the cycle in their own lives, like Shiv with Tom, but Con associates love with abandonment, as he was essentially abandoned by his father, hence he clings to a person who doesn't love him back in Willa. As funny and odd as it is to say you want to do karaoke because you've seen people do it in the movies it's an admission that speaks to living a lonely life. It's him saying, in a way, that he's never experienced real-life companionship. How could he? His siblings are narcissists. His father never cared for him, and he's too rich for people not to suck up to him to leech off his wealth. Even in his advanced age, little thought is given to him. Conor's gift to Logan on his birthday, for example, was quite thoughtful. A container full of sourdough bread, a popular way of making bread in Scotland where Logan was born. But the old man is unfortunately repelled by the gesture, when Conor might just have put more thought into his gift than anybody else did into theirs. All of the Roy siblings are a little screwed up, but who has more reason to be screwed up than Conor? A boy whose mother was institutionalized and then he was abandoned by his father, ignored his whole life by him, as Kendall says, L to the OG perhaps seeing him as a faulty son born from a faulty mother. There is damage there, trauma from the mother and father situation which is still there, and yet he seems the most well-adjusted of the siblings, perhaps a product of successful and fruitful therapy, whereas the other kids are more screwed up but have less reason to be the way they are. Let's not forget, he's a lot older than his siblings, and people can mellow with age. It doesn't mean that he has come to terms with and faced the trauma, just moved on from it, knowing that those wrongs cannot be righted. It's too late. He says to Willa, "You're young and you're full of life, and I don't know, my father's dead and I feel old." And he apologizes for stealing her away from the world, asks her if she's only with him for money, yearning for there to be just one person who he can have a connection with on a human level. There's another raw moment of honesty when he is told of Logan's death and he says, "Oh man, he never even liked me," and also laments that he never got to make his dad proud, but switches immediately to lying and protecting his siblings and himself from some uncomfortable truths when he realized it hurt them. Ever the older brother, in spite of not being well respected or liked. It's like he says to his siblings in the episode before Logan dies, he's at a stage where he doesn't care whether his partner Willa loves him or not. He's acknowledging the stone-cold reality that he needs to pay for human interaction. This implies a level of reflection and, ironically, lack of delusion that we might associate with Conor. He wasn't loved when he should have been and by the people that should have loved him, and now he goes to weird lengths to manufacture love that he knows will never truly be authentic, and he's resigned to it, resigned to people tolerating him for his money. As he says, "I'm a plant that grows on rocks and lives off insects that die inside of me." In terms of the succession war, Conor seems to have worked out that to win the game, it's best not to even play. He's the Carmine Lupertazzi Jr. of Succession, seen as an idiot by everyone else but who's living a far more content life. He was not chosen, therefore he was not tainted. Perhaps it was evident early on that he lacked the acumen, but in a way this has worked in favour for Conor, as he doesn't possess many of the terrible traits his brothers and sister have. And since he is essentially a non-entity, a non-threat, he now gets some of that attention from his father that he's been desperately craving, who has such low expectations of Conor that he isn't frustrated by him anymore. Conor is in that home video thing that the siblings watch where Logan looks at his most comfortable, but the other kids are not there. Logan told Conor about his tomb and where he wanted to be buried. Yes, this partly might be inspired by not seeing Conor as a threat to his throne, and Logan's way of talking with him is quite patronizing, the way you might talk to a pet or a child. But the byproduct of this is that he at least now treats Conor like an actual son, his kid, whereas the other children are essentially assets, competitors even. But why was there such a disconnect for so many years in the first place? Well, could it be that like the victims of the cruise scandals were paid off, hushed up and out of sight, Conor was a reminder of Logan's issues with Conor's mother, whatever happened there. So Logan did to Conor what Waystar did to the cruise victims, paid him off, just to stay away and live out in the desert where he can pretend he doesn't exist. Ultimately, Conor is the least despicable of the siblings and comes off as probably being a nice old brother to have, a decent conversationalist providing you don't push his buttons. With all that being said, I do think there is room to talk about how there is something quite insidious about Conor Roy. His need to gain his father's attention and approval, similar to his siblings, being a driving factor that can make him a very dangerous man. I will look to discuss this in a future video, so be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. What do you think of Conor Roy? Do you think his psyche gets unfairly shafted by fans because people are more interested in discussing Kendall, Roman and Shiv? Is there more to him than meets the eye? Let me know in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.